That's right, I'm a computer vegan now, a Linux user. How do you know someone doesn't use Windows or Mac? Oh, they'll tell you. And if not, the knee socks are a dead giveaway. Windows 11 is coming. For many, it's already here, and I don't want that for various reasons. So I'm on a fork of Arch, which is like the real deal, but for lazy people. With one click, it sets up everything, so all my shit just works. Kinda. I've been at it for a couple months, sandblasted my Windows partition, sold on my incompatible hardware. There's no going back. I'm not a trender. I'm a convert. Windows 11 conceptually pissed me off so much I channeled my inner Rossman and bit off my nose to spite someone else's face. The point of this video is to drop some info I wish I had easy access to a couple months ago and make some terrible jokes along the way. If I had my current self tell a past version of me the things I'm going to say in this video, it would have saved me a lot of heartache, and hopefully it'll help someone else not be complacent. Anyway, if you've used Windows, plenty of modern desktop environments are geared towards that, and most of the standard luxuries are found within. It only took me a week or so to unlearn all the Microsoft norms, so I would highly recommend it if not for one small issue. The fact that I make YouTube videos in a particular way. My method is probably not abnormal, but sits atop 4 core requirements that I initially thought Linux couldn't meet until I dabbled a little bit in the hardware and software alternatives, and even after, it didn't come without great sacrifice. Man, if I just quit YouTube, everything would be peachy, but pushing that boulder burns the fire, and Lord knows I love immolating. My Windows 10 setup was fine-tuned. I'd run console games through an internal AverMedia Live Gamer 4K, which was a PCIe capture card, and then sometimes through a RetroTink 5X upscaler for older titles, and I'd capture them in close to real time. I'd say there was maybe 1 to 2 frames of delay at the absolute most, and I loved the software RE Central. Most AverMedia PCIe cards just straight up don't work on any variant of Linux. People will tell you they do. They are liars. There's a dodgy old driver for Debian or Ubuntu or something for a model that was tangentially related to my own, and I could never get it to run. People said they got it working, but it'd lock up and crash, there'd be audio issues, etc, etc. Not good. So I discarded this capture card that I loved, did exactly what I wanted, and that I paid $350 for. It seems for Linux, USB capture is generally the way to go, but it's not as clean as PCIe. It's slower, it's more prone to sync issues, you got this extra box on your desk. Anyway, there are a few brands I was pondering, Magewell, Blackmagic, but their availability was kinda spotty in Australia and some were quite expensive, so I settled on the EVGA XR1 Pro. Getting the Pro model for me was more about future-proofing as it supports 4K capture and whatever, but also the flashing lights that I can't turn off make it so much better. The first major pillar of my videos is just recording video games, of course. I try not to use anyone else's video, so if I need a clip from a late game boss in Chrono Trigger, that's 20 more hours to the timeline, and any excuse to replay Chrono Trigger will do. I know it's stupid, but that's how I do it. When you want something specific and you've got it in mind, you capture it that way, and then it's yours and you have it. You don't have to fish for hours looking for good quality shit, whatever, right? Capturing through OBS works fine. I now use pass-through to play the games to offset the slight delay, but leave the capture open in a second window for management purposes. It ended up being more functional and better than I had set up previously, so my first pillar has been erected, firm and proud. If you've listened to one of my videos, you'll know that I am not an audio engineer. I'm a bit punk rock. If it's audible and sounds decent through my cheap gamer headset, I run with it. I use Audacity for recording, and that's free and open source, so it has native Linux versions, but I also use Adobe Audition and a set of plugins called Isotope RX10. Boo! Yeah, boo, I know, how could you, Mr. Punk Rock? Let's just say I use an old version of my friend's Audition, but I did legitimately buy the Isotope plugins during a major sale. Got them for $30. I'm happy to pay for solid software that doesn't require a subscription. And Audition is straight up just easier to use and works better. I'm sorry, Audacity sisters, but it's true. The dynamics processing, the de-esser, audio healing, background noise removal, these are the only tools I use. As an Australian, we've got a harsh sibilant, so I drop my S sounds a couple decibels. Dynamic processing seems to do a better job of leveling audio without crunching it too much. The audio healing is for removing weird noises, and background noise removal, explains itself. That's my entire audio process, and you can tell I'm fully aware that I am making YouTube videos. So even despite my move to Linux, I'm still using Audition. That's the one tool I have on a non-internet connected Windows partition, and it's still my friend's copy that he legally let me borrow. I've yet to find anything close to Audition on Linux. I've eyed Reaper, but it doesn't have the same level of control or usability. That said, maybe using it more will change my mind, but if you've got any suggestions, please send them to me. This is my Windows event horizon, and I sit on the precipice. Give me a shove over the edge. The second pillar remains a bit flaccid for now. The roof's wobbly. My ethos with thumbnails has always been make something that isn't visually offensive. Something remotely viewable that doesn't deceive people to bait clicks. I hate that. I hate the people who do it. If you make clickbait, you're a fucking scumbag. How do you sleep at night knowing that your job is just lying? You know what? Back to the good vibes. I'm sorry. This is a positive video. Back to the good vibes. Photoshop. There are a few solid alternatives to Photoshop. There's stock GIMP and Krita, I think is how it's pronounced, both of which are okay, but I don't know, I found they lacked the usability and toolset found within the shop. I'm sure if you committed yourself, you could achieve a similar end result in both, but the same could be said of all religions. I don't want to turn this into a shit on free and open source software party. The people making this stuff for the pittance they receive, if anything, are true digital heroes. Without them, we'd be locked into a world of Adobes and Microsofts. But these megacorps exist where they are for a reason. They meet and define industry needs in response to more and more demand, which is simply impossible for FOSS devs to keep up with, and it shows. However, if you want to jack out of the matrix, if you want to scoff at normies and say, yeah, you wouldn't get it, then sacrifices must be made, and the way I've personally coped is with two tools. The first is Photop or Photop, which is a browser-based Photoshop tier clone. It's not definitive, but it does 90% of the shit that I need from that same friend's old CS6 install. The second tool is PhotoGimp, which is a visual overhaul for GIMP, which makes it look closer to Photoshop and seems to swap a bunch of shortcuts over to the traditional bindings. Honestly, all I really want is content-aware fill and the ease of use. I don't do a lot in Photoshop, and this is another area where, if you're not too precious about it, AI can help you remove backgrounds and all that good stuff now. I've always preferred a manual approach, but it doesn't really make a difference. The end result is more or less the same. My thumbnails generally consist of arranged or modified media from the property I'm covering. I rarely design my own assets. I'm not good at it, and I don't do too much technical stuff, but even if you did, you'd probably be right with GIMP and Photop. I'm also not saying Krita is bad. Krita, let's just say that's user error, 100% on me, I'll own that, but everything felt wrong, and it felt infuriating to interface with. Pillar the Third stands firm, rigid, bearing weight, though barely. Now, we've got our thumbnail, video files, and audio recordings all fine-tuned. That's it, right? Oh wait, now I have to put them all together and make the whole video. Finding decent video editing software was by far my largest hurdle, which speaks volumes as I'm still using Windows for audio editing. That said, what I use Audition for takes a couple minutes, where the time I spend in video editors is hours, sometimes days. I use Sony Vegas or Magix Vegas on Windows and often older builds because it worked fine and I didn't need anything else, just stability and consistency. I run Arch, by the way. Functionally, Vegas is unmatched. I still haven't found anything close to it on Linux, and I doubt there's much close to it on Windows. The ease of use is insane, the tools are great, it's brilliant software, but that could be complacency talking. I did use it for 10 years. If they made a native Linux version, I would pay for it in a heartbeat, as even after finding a pretty solid alternative, I'd rather the thing I have a decade in over the thing I've stuffed around in for a couple months. If you know anything about local alternatives, you'll have heard of Kdenlive, Shotcut, OpenCut, even DaVinci Resolve has a functional Linux version now, and as literally every salesman will tell you, it's the industry standard for color correction. You've heard it, you know it triggered that part of your brain. Let me tell you now, I hate all this software. Again, probably a me issue, I'm not going to shit on people actively keeping entire branches of software viability alive and usable, but I hate them. They almost push me back to Windows. Everything feels wonky, it feels wrong. Kdenlive's user interface is iffy, it lacks a lot of tools, you can't reorder layers, moving and placing files feels bad. Shotcut was more of the same, and OpenShot straight up had big visual errors on the timeline. I couldn't quite figure out if my version was bugged or if it was supposed to be like that. Everything was so unintuitive. I eventually settled on DaVinci Resolve, where I found out the free version doesn't support the H.264 codec unless you pay for it, and it doesn't support MP4 files, nor AAC audio at all, which means I couldn't import my captured video, nor could I create proxy files for use in the software. I could use the industry leader in color correction, all I had to do was manually re-encode terabytes of game capture. Also the user interface, little bit overwhelming. That was the point where I said to myself, if I don't find video editing software I can actually use and want to learn, then I'm not going to use it, and I need to edit videos on Windows, which kinda defeats the point. To reiterate, I'd nuked my Windows drive, sold my Windows-only hardware, and had Linux alternatives on the way. I had hit that point of despair, where you're in an unfamiliar environment and can't see a way out. I just want to go home and sleep in my own bed. I'd made a foolish choice, overcommitted, and now I was suffering the consequences. But Hunt Showdown did work. In a desperate search, I tried everything. I scoured the Arch user repository, all of CachyOS's pre-approved software. I tried PTV, which I don't think has keyframe support, so I had to retire that quite fast, though I loved the user interface. This is where I learned that my editing wasn't as bare bones as I thought, and that I actually needed a tool that could do things. However, if you're new to editing and everything seems a bit intense, give PTV a look, it seems really cool. So I turned to Flowblade, which crashes on Arch because it's too new or something, wasn't interested in going down that rabbit hole, and with nothing else left, out of sheer desperation, I turned to the one and only source I trust in a time of crisis: ChatGPT. Honestly, if you're moving to Linux, LLMs are way more helpful than snarky forum police. It's helped me with simple usability conflicts and even to build a script for toggling an AUX line into my audio interface with a shortcut. I tried to avoid using it, as I see it as a slippery slope. You know, the more it thinks, the less you do. But if you want a simple question about Linux answered, and don't want to spend hours reading up relevant shit you barely understand, it is genuinely useful. It's also a great way to get real-time feedback on questions you may have, and with the modern state of search engines, I mean, don't need to say anything more about that. The language models are invaluable for data collection, especially if the distro wikis are coming up blank. Just remember to fully trust everything it says and blindly copy-paste whatever commands you're given. And that's not an ad for ChatGPT, it's just the one that I use because I guess it's the most well-known. You could probably use any LLM, you could probably train your own. Anyway, in a godly pull, we're talking a generational happenstance. The machine told me to get Blender. That's right, Blender, the 3D modeling program. You want me to get Blender for video editing? What are you, crazy? How does that even work? Well, it does, and it's exactly what I was after. It looks enough like Vegas to ease me in, and there are some pretty major differences. But once I set a few of my shortcuts back and, accepted that some of their defaults were actually better than what I was used to, I got to work. It was slow, but it was steady. It felt right. It felt good. I'm a Blender guy now, and I've never been happier. The second I started moving the fully supported clips around the tracks, I knew this was it, and the weight of despair lifted. I was free, in my house, in my own bed. Obviously, it's not perfect, no software is. A few small caveats are that they seem to steer you towards their more traditional toolset for anything even remotely complex. It's not a huge issue. You should expect to learn new systems when you use new programs, but it can be intimidating, especially given the sparse documentation. Also, their audio controls are horrible. They are the worst. So I render out my videos without background music, and then I finish it off in Kdenlive, as the audio section there is almost exactly how it used to work in Vegas, which I think's fantastic. But again, that's probably just me being autistic. All that matters is that I've achieved freedom from Windows, except for my declicker plugin and Audition. But, I'm sure with time I will get there. If you've got any recommendations, please in the comments, please. If you do a straight transition to Linux, it's easy, it's achievable, especially now more than ever, and if you use any of the tools I previously did, there are good alternatives, even for people as particular as myself. This is likely the last I'll speak of it. I'm not about to become one of those stupid Linux clickbait channels that are like, oh, I tried Linux for 30 days, and then all they do is complain about how Linux isn't Windows. Oh my god, I hate fucking YouTube. Anyway, if you're looking for more info, more recommendations, stuff like that, there are a couple good channels I'll put in the description that go way more in depth about way more subjects than I ever will. And for now, farewell. Bye!